I found my wife cheating with her boss at our $2 million estate. Then she forged my signature on a $350, $0 loan to buy a luxury yacht. Now she's claiming I owe her half the property and the debts in a bitter legal battle. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. The thing is, I always believed I had a solid marriage with Emily. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I trusted her completely. We built a life together on a $2 million estate that I worked hard for: business, investments, the whole 9 yards. I thought I knew everything about her, but I was dead wrong. The biggest shock came when I found out she was cheating on me with her boss, David. And what's worse, it wasn't some quick fling or drunken mistake. No, this was a full-blown affair, and it had been going on for months. It all started about 3 months ago. Emily had been acting strange, less affectionate, secretive about her phone, always out meeting clients or working late. At first, I just thought she was stressed with her job. She's a high-powered executive, after all. But then I noticed her phone kept disappearing, and she'd get defensive if I asked to see it. She'd say she was planning a surprise or working on a project. I let it slide because I didn't want to turn into some paranoid husband. But then last week, I decided to do a little digging. I got suspicious when I noticed her texting more than usual and her phone was always locked. One night I managed to get a hold of it when she was in the shower. I saw messages that made my stomach drop. There were texts from David, flirty, suggestive, and downright inappropriate. Things like "can't wait to see you tonight," and "you're the only one who makes me feel alive." I saw pictures of her in a hotel room, half-dressed with him. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That moment hit me like a freight train. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me, to everything we built? I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and despair. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I had to get more proof. I needed to be sure. So I started digging deeper, sneaking into her emails, her bank accounts, even her social media. It wasn't long before I found more than enough evidence. She'd been meeting him at fancy hotels, going out for business dinners that were really dates. And the worst part, she lied through her teeth every time I asked her about her whereabouts. But that wasn't the only shock. As I was gathering all this evidence, I stumbled upon something else that made my blood run cold. Emily had forged my signature on a loan $350 to buy a luxury yacht. The yacht was supposed to be a surprise for me, she'd said, but it was all a lie. She took out the loan without telling me, and now she's claiming I owe her half the property and the debts in a bitter legal battle. I couldn't believe her audacity. She's been lying, cheating, and now trying to turn the tables on me. I felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. How did I not see this coming? How could she be so manipulative? I kept asking myself if I ever truly knew her at all. I'd poured my heart into this marriage, built a life from scratch, and now it felt like it was all crumbling beneath me. I was furious, but I also felt hurt, like I was the last to know, the last to see the truth. I had trusted her blindly, and she'd used that trust to destroy everything. I knew I had to act, but I wasn't sure what my next move was going to be. All I knew was that I couldn't let her get away with this without some kind of reckoning. After I found out about the affair and the forged loan, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and my mind was racing a mile a minute. I kept replaying the moments when I was blind to her lies, questioning how I missed all the signs. Emily was always so bitchy and manipulative, but I never thought she'd go this far, cheat on me with her boss, forge my signature, and try to take everything I worked so hard for. It was like she was playing a game and I was just a pawn she was ready to sacrifice. The first thing I did was confront her. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the forged loan, the lies. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, the one she always used when she thought she was in control. "You're overreacting, Jack," she said, crossing her arms. "You're just jealous because I'm more successful than you and you're insecure." That's when I saw her true colors. A manipulative, selfish woman who always had a way of turning things around to make herself look innocent. She insisted she was doing it all for us, that David was just a distraction and that I shouldn't jump to conclusions. I told her I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, emails, and she just laughed it off, saying I was paranoid and crazy. But I wasn't about to let her gaslight me. I told her I was done playing her games, that I wanted a divorce and full transparency. That's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me names, saying I was a jealous, insecure loser who didn't appreciate her. She claimed I was trying to ruin her career, that I was just bitter because I was too stupid to see how successful she was becoming. She even had the nerve to say she'd been planning to leave me long before I found out, using her affair as a way to get out of the marriage and take everything she could. That was the moment I felt a deep, bitter anger rise inside me. I realized she'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my money, and in return she'd been screwing around and forging my signature to buy a yacht she knew I didn't want her to have. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare, only I was wide awake now. I decided I needed to do something to protect myself, to fight back. I couldn't let her get away with this. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly, a little devastated. I had loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I was questioning everything. How could she lie so easily? How could she manipulate me? Like this, I kept asking myself if I'd missed any signs, if I was just blind to her true nature. But deep down, I knew I wasn't the problem. She was. She'd been playing a game, and I was the fool who trusted her. Still, I knew I couldn't just walk away without a plan. I started consulting a lawyer, trying to piece together all the evidence I'd collected. I wanted to make sure I'd be protected, especially since she was claiming I owed her half the property and the debts. That yacht, the estate, the loans, she was trying to spin it all to her advantage. I had to fight her, not just for my money but for my dignity. I realized that this wasn't just about love or betrayal. It was about standing my ground and not letting her control the narrative anymore. I also started thinking about what I wanted from all this mess. Divorce. Yes. But also, I wanted to make her pay for what she'd done, her lies, her deception, her betrayal. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. I had worked too hard for that estate, and I was going to let her destroy me. I was angry, yes, but I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just lash out blindly. I needed a plan, and I needed to be ready for whatever legal battles or surprises she threw my way. I felt like I was entering a war, and I had no idea how long it would last or how it would end. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going down without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, financial statements, and sleepless nights. I couldn't believe how much she had lied, about her affair, about the yacht, about everything. Emily always played the victim, crying and spinning stories about how I was controlling and jealous. But the truth was she'd been planning her escape for months. I started digging even deeper into her accounts, her emails, her texts. I had to get every piece of evidence I could, especially since she was already trying to spin the story in court that I was an unfit husband who owed her half the estate because I was abusive and neglectful. Her lies about the yacht were the most infuriating part. She forged my signature on a $350, $0 loan, claiming it was a gift for me, a surprise. But I found the loan documents and the bank statements. She took out the money without my knowledge, and now she's claiming I owe her half of it. That yacht, it's sitting in a marina, paid for with my money, and she's been telling everyone I'm some kind of deadbeat who refuses to pay my debts. The audacity. She's claiming she bought it for us, but I know better. I never approved that loan, never signed anything. She forged my name, and now she's trying to make me the villain in her twisted story. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, bitchy, manipulative, always throwing in a fake tear or a poor me story when I confronted her. She insisted she was just trying to make things work, that David was just a fling, that she never meant for it to go this far. But I saw through her lies. She'd lie about where she was, who she was with, even what she was doing. And every time I pressed her, she'd turn it around and call me paranoid or insecure. She's always been good at gaslighting, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had enough evidence to prove her lies, and I was ready to use it. The legal battle was brutal, My lawyer told me that she was claiming I owed her half of the estate and the yacht, even though I had receipts, emails, and bank statements proving she forged my signature and lied about the purchase. She's trying to take everything: my house, my investments, the yacht, and even some of the cash I had saved. I started to realize how deep her betrayal ran. She's not just cheating, she's trying to steal my life. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. I never thought I'd be fighting my wife in court, especially over money and trust. It felt like I was losing everything I'd worked for, and I was furious that she was doing this to me. But I also knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her see how much she was getting under my skin. I gathered all my evidence, prepared my case, and made sure my lawyer was ready for the fight. I didn't want to just take her to court. No, I wanted to destroy her lies, show the truth, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. I had to put an end to her manipulations, her lies, her betrayal. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant tearing her down a little in the process. Deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The court date was looming, and I could already feel the tension thickening in the air. I'd never been in a situation like this before, and honestly, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to just walk away, forget everything, and start over. But the other part, the part that still loved her, that trusted her for so long, she was gone. That woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who was willing to lie, cheat, and steal from me. I was hurt, yes, but I was also furious. I knew I had to stand my ground. I had to fight for my property, my reputation, and my dignity. I kept telling myself I'd get through this, that I'd come out the other side stronger. But inside I was a mess, confused, betrayed, and feeling more alone than I ever had. I kept asking myself if I should even bother fighting for her anymore, or just walk away and start over. But then I remembered the estate, the years I put into building this life, and I knew I couldn't let her take it all away without a fight. No matter how much it hurt, I had to be the one in control now. I had to win this battle, not just for the money, but to prove to myself that I could survive her betrayal. And I was ready to do whatever it took. The courtroom was a battlefield I wasn't prepared for, but I knew I had to be ready. Emily showed up with her smug little smirk, acting like she was the victim, playing the innocent wife betrayed by her horrible husband. She spun her stories about how I was controlling and neglectful, how she was just trying to make a better life for us with her boss, David. She claimed she only forged my signature because I was too blind to see how much I was holding her back, and that the yacht was a gift for me, even though I had all the proof that she took out the loan behind my back. My lawyer laid out the evidence, the forged documents, the emails, the bank statements. We had her dead to rights. Still, she kept lying, twisting the facts, trying to manipulate the court like she'd done with me all along. She insisted she never cheated, that David was just a business associate, and that the affair was just sex, nothing serious. But her words rang hollow, especially when I had the texts and photos showing otherwise. The yacht, paid for with a loan she forged my signature on, was now a huge point of contention. She claimed it was a joint purchase, that I owed her half, but I had proof she lied about that too. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, trying to get to the bottom of her lies. I felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. I knew I had everything on my side, but Emily was good at spinning stories, and I could see her trying to manipulate the court's perception. She kept claiming I was abusive and unfit, trying to turn the narrative against me. That's when I snapped a little, seeing her attempt to paint herself as the victim while she was the one who lied, cheated, and forged my signature. I couldn't stay silent. I told the court exactly what I knew, how she'd been cheating on me with David, forging my signature to buy the yacht, and trying to claim half of everything I owned. The judge finally called for a recess to review the evidence. I felt a moment of relief, but also a sinking feeling that this wasn't over yet. Emily's lawyer was already working on her next move, trying to discredit me and spin her own version of events. I knew I had to stay sharp, keep my composure, and be ready for whatever she threw at me next. I had the proof, and I was determined to use it to fight her lies. As I sat waiting outside the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of anger and sadness. All those years I spent building my estate, trusting her, loving her, gone in an instant. She turned into someone I didn't recognize, someone who lied, cheated, and even forged my signature. I kept thinking about the betrayal, the lies, the way she manipulated everyone around her. I'd always thought she was bitchy, yes, but I never thought she'd sink this low. I also knew that this legal battle was just the beginning. Even if I won this round, I had to prepare for the fallout. Her trying to claim I owed her half the property in debts, her trying to turn the court against me. I felt a cold determination taking over. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was going to fight for my estate, my reputation, and my dignity. If she thought she could lie her way out of this, she was dead wrong. I had the evidence, and I was ready to use everything I had to come out on top. But inside, I was exhausted. All the stress, the lies, the betrayal, it was like a heavy weight pressing down on me. I wondered how much longer I could keep going like this. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now I knew the truth. She was a different person, someone I didn't even recognize anymore. Still, I owed it to myself to see this through, to fight for what was rightfully mine. I had to be the one to restore some sense of justice. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't just let her walk all over me. Not after everything she'd done. The days after the court session dragged on like an endless storm. I was caught between hope and dread, knowing I had the evidence to back me up, but also aware that Emily's manipulations were far from over. She was already spinning her own version to her friends and family, claiming I was the one who was controlling and abusive. I could see her bitchy smirk whenever she thought she was getting the upper hand, and honestly, it made my blood boil. She was good at lying, but I wasn't about to let her win this easily. In the meantime, I took steps to secure my estate and protect myself from her next move. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her. She'd been sneaking around, meeting David, and I needed to know what she was up to. I also started preparing for the inevitable counterclaims. She was already claiming I owed her half the property, including the yacht, and that I was responsible for the loans she forged in my name. I knew I had to be one step ahead, so I gathered every document, every email, every piece of proof I could find. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. Then came her move. I got served with papers claiming I owed her half the estate and debts. It was a bitter blow, but I expected it. Her lawyer was trying to spin her narrative that I'd been a neglectful husband, that I'd refused to acknowledge her contributions, and that I was the reason she'd had to forge my signature. I could see her bitchy smirk in my mind, that look she always had when she thought she was pulling one over on someone. But I also had the proof, screenshots of her texts with David, the forged loan documents, bank statements showing where the money went. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready for the fight. I met with my lawyer again and we mapped out a strategy. We filed a counterclaim, asserting that Emily had committed fraud, forged my signature, and had been unfaithful. I told him I wanted full custody of the yacht, the estate, and the right to recover damages for her betrayal. I also made it clear I wasn't going to settle for her trying to take everything I'd built. I was done being the victim. Emily's lies had gone too far and I was going to make her pay. The emotional toll was intense. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her sneers, the way she manipulated everyone around her. I trusted her for so long, and now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd do anything to get her way. It hurt more than I could say. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now I wondered if I ever truly knew her. Every day was a battle between anger, heartbreak, and a burning desire for justice. I felt like I was fighting not just for my money, but for my dignity and my sanity. Despite all this, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing that honesty and trust could somehow fix everything. But betrayal like this, it changes you. I knew I had to be stronger, smarter, more cautious. I could let her manipulate me again. If I was going to win this, I had to stay focused, stay calm, and keep my eyes on the prize. I had to reclaim what was mine and make sure she paid for her lies. Looking ahead, I knew the court battle would be long and messy. Emily was relentless, and she'd do everything she could to turn things in her favor. But I also knew I had the truth, and I had to hold on to that. I was tired of feeling like a victim, tired of the lies and betrayal, but I was determined not to let her destroy everything I'd worked for. I had to see this through, to fight for my estate, my reputation, and the life I wanted to rebuild. No matter how much it hurt, I knew I couldn't give up. I'd come too far to let her take everything away without a fight. The final court date arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a war zone. Emily was there, looking as bitchy and manipulative as ever, trying to keep her smirk glued on her face. She still insisted she was the victim, that I was an unkind, controlling husband who just couldn't handle her success. But I had the evidence, screenshots, forged documents, bank statements, witness testimonies, that proved everything she'd done. I knew she was desperate to spin her lies, but the truth was staring her right in the face. When my lawyer finally presented our case, I saw her face fall. The judge listened carefully, asking questions that made Emily stumble. It was clear she hadn't expected us to have such a solid case. I watched as the court reviewed the evidence, and I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. After hours of argument, the judge finally delivered the verdict. Emily had committed fraud by forging my signature and was not entitled to claim half of the estate or the yacht. The court ordered her to pay back the loan plus damages and awarded me full custody of the yacht and the estate. It was like a heavy weight was lifted from my shoulders. I finally felt some sense of justice. Emily's face contorted with fury and disbelief as the judge's decision sank in. She tried to argue, to twist the facts, but it was useless. The evidence was just too overwhelming. As she stormed out of the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel a bitter satisfaction. She had finally been exposed for who she really was. In the days that followed, I started the process of rebuilding my life. I sold the yacht, which Emily had claimed was ours, and used the proceeds to pay off some of the debts she'd forged in my name. I cut ties with her completely. No more calls, no more texts. I focused on my estate, my investments, and healing from the emotional trauma she'd inflicted. The trust I once had in her was shattered, but I learned a hard lesson. Never trust blindly, especially not someone who's willing to lie and cheat to get what they want. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. It's been a brutal, painful experience, but it's also made me stronger. I've learned that you can't let betrayal define you. Sometimes, you have to fight tooth and nail to reclaim what's yours. Emily's betrayal taught me to be more cautious, more guarded, and to value honesty above all else. I don't regret loving her once, but I do regret trusting her blindly. Now I know my worth, and I know that I deserve someone who respects and values me, not someone who manipulates and lies her way to the top. The most important thing I've taken away from this is that justice might be slow, but it's worth fighting for. I've lost a lot, yes, but I've also gained clarity. I know I'm better off without her, and I'm finally ready to move on. I'll never forget what she did, but I refuse to let her control my future. I've learned to stand my ground, fight for what's right, and never let anyone take advantage of me again. Life will throw its curveballs, but I'll face them head-on, with honesty, integrity, and the knowledge that I came out of this stronger than I ever thought I could be.